Salute and welcome to Ralph Reads, brought to you by TURN, the United Ronin Networks. My name is Ralph Anthony Garcia, also known as R4. The legal, the loyal, the regal, the royal, Ronin Ralph, your master of ceremonies. I would like to take this moment to tell you folks thank you for joining me on Ralph Reads, and to please tell a friend to like, share, comment, and subscribe to TURN, the United Ronin Networks. We are Ronin. Today on Ralph Reads, I present to you the continuation of Death List by Al C. Clark, better known as Donald Goines. Let the reading commence. Chapter 10. The detectives arrived, and the Kingfisher was ready for them. His white lawyer, Mr. Booth, was there to answer all the questions for him. He had only to lie back on his couch and nod his head. Benson stood on the sidelines and watched. So this was the big man he had heard so much about. The son of a bitch is so scared he's damn near shitting in his pants, the detective reflected coldly. So you say, Nelson asked for what seemed like the 20th time, that you saw this car come hurtling around the corner and you knew at once it had hitmen in it? Now you don't really expect us to believe this crap, that you didn't recognize any of the so-called hitmen, do you? The Kingfisher just shrugged his shoulders. I don't give a flying fuck what you believe, he stated harshly. I done told you what happened, what I saw. Now you can take it from there. Nelson shrugged his shoulders. He wasn't used to black men talking that way to him. We could take you downtown, you know. Then maybe you feel like cooperating with us. Benson had to glance away to keep the smile from coming to his lips. His partner, Ryan, recognized the look and hid his own smile. Taking the Kingfisher downtown on some bullshit would be like sticking your head in a lion's mouth to see if he had a toothache. Ryan walked over to his partner. What do you think about all this shit? He asked seriously. Benson shrugged. If the guy really knew anything, he'd talk. 3 of his boys got knocked off. 1 was hurt seriously enough to go to the hospital. Plus, he's scared so bad he's damn near ready to shit on himself every time somebody comes through that door. He talk all right. You can bet on it. Ryan nodded. That's the same way I got it figured. But I know he knows something. I don't know what it is, but he's got a goddamn good idea who's trying to knock him off. We'll see, Benson said as he walked over toward the man on the couch. For some reason, he derived a joyous warmth from seeing the fear in the man. This was the bastard who supplied the whole fucking city with dope, and yet none of them could touch him. In fact, they had to handle him with kid gloves, or they would have their asses in a sling by the next day. It was easy to see from the frowns on Nelson's and Stewart's faces that they didn't like the idea of the older detective moving in while they were interrogating the gangster. When you finish talking with these boys, King, I'd like to have a private little conversation with you, if it's possible, Benson inquired quietly. The Kingfisher didn't waste any time. He just got up off the couch, ignoring the 2 young detectives who had been talking to him. Let's step back in my bedroom. Maybe we can find some kind of privacy there, he said after tossing a look at his lawyer. Benson shook his head. It's not necessary for him to come along, but if you want him, it's up to you, Benson said softly. Before opening the door that led into the bedroom, the Kingfisher stopped and stared silently at the officer. He waved his lawyer off. Neither man spoke until after the door was closed. Benson glanced around the well-furnished bedroom. Everything inside it was expensive. The king-size bed had a deep red bedspread on it, and the carpet on the floor was black, mixed with a dark red stain that matched the rest of the room. I might as well come straight to the point, Benson began. I believe you and I both know who's responsible for this shit. I know you don't want any kind of gang war, but this young bastard I'm thinking about wouldn't care one way or the other. It was a shot in the dark for Benson. He didn't know for sure who was behind the killings. You're goddamn right, Kingfisher roared. That fucking Kenyatta ain't got enough sense to pour pee out of a boot. So there it was, Benson reflected. After all was said and done, it really was Kenyatta behind it all. How the hell would a guy like Kenyatta go about getting the kind of information he need to knock off some of these dagos he hit? Benson inquired. I mean, I can understand him getting a fix on you, but not on some of them white boys. Kingfisher tossed his hands in the air. That's the goddamn problem right there. For a minute, some of the big guys thought I was responsible for it. But he's made a hit on one guy that I didn't even know shit about. Kingfisher fell silent for a minute, then continued. After the big boys stopped and put their thinking caps on, they realized that it wouldn't make sense for me to be in on this kind of shit. Why? I mean, I have everything to lose and nothing to gain. The Kingfisher shook his head. Nah, they realized it couldn't be me. I've told them everything I know about this creep, too. As the Kingfisher talked, Benson realized that the man was trying to sell the idea to himself that the big boys really believed him when he said he didn't have anything to do with it. He must be in the middle of it, Benson reasoned, as he watched the big-time dope pusher try to make sense out of what was happening. The Kingfisher continued to talk. Them was black dudes that tried to make that hit on us today. There ain't no doubt about that. I got a good peep at 'em, even if I can't pick none of 'em out of a lineup. The man was really talking to himself, trying to figure out what was happening to the world he lived in. Them punks came out of nowhere, it seemed, he continued. It was like something out of the Roaring '20s. I mean, guys don't go in for this kind of shit no more. It don't pay off. It hurts where it shouldn't, in the pocketbook. Benson didn't cut him off. He just let the big man talk. This was the best information he had come up with yet. The only problem is, where could this punk have gotten the information he's got? If I knew the answer to that one, I'd be able to bust his shit wide open. All at once, Benson changed the conversation. What do you suppose a guy like that could come up with the weapons he's getting, man? I know you could get your hands on a chopper or two, but for the average nigga in the ghetto, buying a submachine gun is like trying to catch a ride to the moon. Benson watched his face as he asked the question. He knew he was giving out something, but he honestly didn't know where Kenyatta was coming up with the heavy guns. All at once, Kingfisher snapped his fingers. It ain't many places, I can tell you. Offhand, I couldn't come up with but 2 or 3 people. Suddenly, he stopped talking and a light came into his eyes. He smiled coldly and stood up from the edge of the bed. Our interview is over with, copper. I got business to take care of, he said, and opened the bedroom door. Kingfisher didn't even bother to look back to see if the detective was following him. He walked straight over to his lawyer and spoke in a voice that could be heard all over the room. How long have we got to put up with this shit? Can't you get rid of some of these people? I got business to take care of. Benson didn't even bother to wait to see how the little fat lawyer would go about trying to get rid of the policemen crowding the apartment. He went to his partner and whispered something in his ear. Both men left immediately. Neither man bothered to speak until they reached the sidewalk. I think that's the key, Ryan, Benson said to his partner as they hurried toward the car. When I mentioned the gun connect, he jumped out of his skin. It dawned on him then, just as it did me. The person supplying the information is the same one Kenyatta gets his guns from. It can't be any different. Ryan got behind the steering wheel, listening to his partner. I don't know why we didn't see it before. Now, all we gotta do is find out who the hell is big enough to supply the kinds of guns Kenyatta is using, and we got our man. We already got a damn good idea who that is, Ryan stated as he pulled out into the traffic. He didn't bother to look at the surprised expression on his partner's face. Like hell, you say, Benson exploded. If we knew that much, we'd have come down on these bastards long before now. Well, we can't prove it, but just stop and think. You ain't forget the day that we have seen that fat bastard coming out of Kenyatta's place, have you? Well, we checked out the license number, and that took us up into a dead end. But don't forget, we also checked out the ownership of the place and found out it was owned by a black man. So whoever Fat Boy was, I kinda think he was our man. Ryan fell silent for a minute, then added, You and I been doing some piss-poor police work, Ben. We've had this clue and haven't taken advantage of it. Why? Because we weren't sure. But now, we've got to turn up every fucking thing. Ryan watched his partner struggle with the dilemma. Okay, Ryan, what now? We didn't see the guy well enough to really recognize him in the mug books. Benson sat straight up and grinned from ear to ear like a kid. But now that we know the bastard probably handles guns, all we got to do is check out the mug books for big-time gun runners. And the first son of a bitch that even resembles that fat bastard will have a hell of a lot of questions to answer. Ryan picked up speed and cut in and out of the traffic. At last, they had something they could put their teeth into. Something a little more solid than a hope or a hunch. What about our informers? Ryan asked as he lit up a smoke. You think one of them might be able to come up with something that might also help? Benson shook his head. Nah, it's been too big for them so far, so why even think in that direction? I believe this should be our biggest break. If we get our hands on the man supplying the guns, we got him. I think we better hurry before Kingfisher puts the word out too. The big boys ain't gonna like the idea of someone giving out information on them like this. It's got 3 of them knocked off already, and no telling how many other names are still on that fucking list. Ryan shook his head in agreement. I'd like to get a real good look at that list. It would make our work a hell of a lot easier. If we could have gotten to Kingfisher to tell us a little more about who some of his friends are, that would have probably helped. It's easier to get help from hell, Benson answered shortly. Kingfisher is scared to death, but not that scared. As they neared the ramp leading to the freeway, a car swerved in front of them, causing Ryan to slam on his brakes. Damn! Ryan cursed loudly as both men braced themselves for the sudden stop. That's one damn good theory, Ben, about that list. It makes sense, all right. In fact, it makes more sense than anything we've come up with yet. Benson accepted the compliment quietly. He hoped that he was on the right path. Too many people had been killed. Ryan cut into his thoughts sharply, bringing him back to reality. Even with the death of Kingfisher's right-hand man, we have to come to the conclusion that it ties in with the murders downtown. Before Benson could add his little bit, Ryan continued, speaking in that soft voice he used whenever he was thinking out loud. The brutal killing of the children doesn't fit with the gangland killing, though. Professional killers would never have butchered the children. Maybe the guy was trying to force information from the woman and he attempted to influence her by brutalizing the children. Benson made a small gesture with his hands, then dropped them back into his lap. As he continued to speak, his words came slowly, as if it hurt him to speak. Something like this, Ryan, tears me up. I've seen a lot of killings, but the way them kids were done up, it makes me sick to my stomach to even think about. The traffic on the freeway was moving swiftly, so it didn't take but minutes before Ryan reached his exit, the Jefferson Avenue ramp going west. He came off the freeway and made a right-hand turn. I was wondering, Benson began, if we might have gotten better information from the feds. A guy who sells guns on this scale might be somebody the FBI would be keeping tabs on. Now you mention it, Ryan roared. You wait patiently until I get us back to police headquarters. Then you drop this bombshell on me. Even as he spoke, he drove past the garage where he ordinarily would have parked their car. As they drove through the main part of downtown, Benson grinned to himself. He could tell his partner liked the idea, even though Ryan didn't come out and say it. The traffic in the heart of town was congested, but Ryan moved in and out rather swiftly. He got a sharp glance from a policeman on a motorcycle as he got the jump on a crowded bus, taking off from the red light from the inside lane. When he reached Michigan Avenue, he had trouble trying to locate a parking spot. Why don't you just put the bastard in the no parking zone? Benson inquired as they circled the block. Man, Benson began, if I knew we were going to have to hitchhike all the way over to the federal building from our parking spot, I'd have called a dispatcher and had him send a squad car to drop us off. Like hell, Ryan answered. It's just another one of your smart ideas coming 8 hours too late, that's all. On the second time around the block, Ryan saw a driver climbing into his car in front of the federal building in a no parking zone. Ryan grinned, pulling into the spot as soon as the driver pulled away from the curb. I didn't notice any ticket on his car, Ryan stated, backing up smoothly and parking. Benson got out first and waited on the sidewalk for his partner. Ryan joined him. I don't give a shit, Ben, what time it is when we finish, but whatever it is, I'm gonna find me some place to eat. I ain't never seen a bastard like you. You just don't believe in eating. The men joked back and forth as they made their way into the building and caught the elevator up to the 5th floor. They made their inquiries, then showed their badges. A woman led them down the hall to an almost empty suite. There were 2 women working, one behind a huge typewriter that looked as if it had seen better days, while the other, a tall blonde, was sitting behind a rather dingy-looking desk covered with papers. Both women glanced up when the threesome entered. The tall blonde got up from her desk and came to meet them before they could step behind the enclosure.
You gentlemen will have to wait here at the counter while I bring the mug books to you.
Both men shrugged and waited patiently until she returned carrying 3 large books.
Well, since you fellows seem to be in good hands, I'll depart,
the matronly-looking woman who had brought them to the mug file said. Neither man glanced up from the books they had taken and laid out on the counter. The woman put the 3rd book next to them and returned to her desk. For the next hour, both men pored over the books until perspiration was running freely from their brows. The woman had come and gone with fresh books so many times that she became irritated when they called to her for more. After another hour, Ryan snapped his finger down on the mugshot. I couldn't swear on it, Ben, 'cause all I got was a side view of the bastard, but this could be him. Those fucking double chins of his were kind of hard to hide. Benson glanced over his shoulder at the picture, then almost shoved his partner out of the way. He stared hard at the mugshot while his agile mind went back to that day in front of Kenyatta's place. The shrill voice of the blonde interrupted his concentration.
It's my lunchtime,
she stated harshly.
You men will just have to come back later today if you don't have what you want now. We close this department at lunchtime.
Benson continued to study the mugshot in front of him, both men ignoring the woman standing there tapping her foot. Benson finally ended his examination of the picture. He said only 2 words to his partner. That's him. The statement was brief, but there was no doubt in Ryan's mind about whether or not his partner was right or wrong. If Benson said that was their man, then that was the man they were going to run down. As the woman reached over and tried to close the large book, Ryan coldly shoved her hand away. He read the name under the picture. You think we need a picture of the guy? Ryan asked as Benson turned away from the counter. Again, his partner was brief and to the point. Nah, it ain't necessary. I say we pick up the fat punk up now. After we eat, Ryan said, and both men laughed as they started toward the door. Chapter 11. The sprawling acreage of the farm was shown to its best when the sun was setting behind the wooded area at the end of the riding paths. The few horses that were kept on the farm were out in a small enclosure behind the huge white barn that contained most of the hay and grain fed to the livestock. As Kenyatta glanced out of the upstairs bedroom window in the main farmhouse, he could see riders coming out of the wooded section and heading for the huge white barn. Scattered along their path were the many smaller cabins that surrounded the main building. As the horseback riders got closer, Kenyatta could make out his right-hand man, Ali, riding tall in the saddle. The man's name left a bitter taste in his mouth. Ali wanted all the rewards that went with big money, but he didn't want to do anything for it. Kenyatta finished the cigarette he was smoking and glanced around for an ashtray. His mind wandered back to the conversation he had just had on the phone. His gun connect was finished. The fat honky was scared to death. The man hadn't been able to accept the killings Kenyatta's people had put on the big white dope pushers. As Kenyatta thought about it, he smiled grimly. What had the man expected when he took their money for the goddamn information? Did he think Kenyatta was paying out that kind of bread just for kicks? Whatever the bastard thought, he had come out and told Kenyatta that the gun connect was finished. Finished hell, Kenyatta reflected. If that fat bastard thought he was gonna get out of it that easy, he had enough sense to make a jackass fly backward. No way. No fucking way in the fucking world was Kenyatta going to allow Angelo's fat ass to get away with his money and the knowledge the man possessed. He was the only man who had the slightest idea of who was behind the hits. If he decided to sell that information, he wouldn't have any trouble finding buyers. Betty opened the bedroom door and came in carrying a small silver tray with 2 drinks on it.
Here, honey. I thought you might like something cool.
As he took the offered drink, he smiled down at the tall, attractive black woman. There was something about the way she carried herself, the way she held her head high in a lofty manner. There was the mark of nobility about her. Each time she took a step, Her long red gown would open up, revealing a beautiful black leg. Her hair was done up in a huge natural, and her ears were adorned with large African earrings. I want you to get on the phone and start calling until you reach the creeper for me. It's very important that I talk to him at once, Kenyatta ordered as he took the drink, then turned away from the beautiful woman. His mind was on other things at the moment, yet if he kept looking at her, he knew he would end up postponing something while he took a quick roll in the hay. She seemed to read his mind.
I was hoping, Daddy, that you might find time to take care of a little bit of your homework. It's been neglected lately, for some reason,
she said in a husky voice that sent ripples up and down his spine. Nah, baby. It's not enough time right now. I want you to get on that phone and take care of my business for me, he stated again, still with his back to her. Even though she hadn't put her hands on him, he could feel her presence. It was like an unwanted alien sending out brainwaves that he couldn't cut off. The motivating forces were working, and it showed a weakness on his part. To let his woman have that much power over him, something he resented, while at the same time loving her even more for being able to cause him such a specific emotional disturbance. But it was a disturbance that he didn't want at the time, because he had other things on his mind. She took one more glance at her man and went over to the phone. She sat down on the bed with the telephone in her lap, looking at Kenyatta's stiff back. She couldn't understand why at times she felt as if he was fighting against her, not wanting to allow himself the pleasure of really loving her. Possibly, she thought, he was afraid that he might lose some of his power over her if he were to submit to her demanding love. Betty dialed the number of the 20 Grand Motel, but that came up a blank. She tried another motel, but this time she stopped and thought about the man she was trying to reach. The creeper would probably be hiding in an out-of-the-way place, one that didn't have much traffic. Because of the crime he had committed, she figured he would want seclusion.
His very soul should cry out for it,
she reflected, as she remembered the news flash she had heard telling about the killing of the small children. She had known at once that the creeper was behind it. From conversations she had overheard between her man and that monster, she had put the crime at his doorstep. Nobody else in the organization could or would do something that vicious. Even Kenyatta had been shocked when he heard about it. It had been uncalled for. The death of the children was something that none of them wanted. As she hesitated with the telephone cradled in her lap, it came to her in a flash. The dilapidated Kingsman Motel, located over on Grand River Avenue near Davidson Street, would be a good place for a man to hide. It was also one of the motels on their list of hideouts. It took a minute to get information to give her the number of the motel, and then she put through her call.
Hello?
She said in that musical voice of hers.
Do you have a Mr. Marcus Gregory staying there? I don't know his room number, but I'm sure he checked in there sometime this week.
She waited a minute. Then the desk man answered that he didn't have such a guest and put through the call. Suddenly, a man's heavy voice was on the other end.
Just a minute,
she replied, and held the phone out to Kenyatta, making sure she didn't use any name the switchboard operator could remember. It was bad enough making the call from the country. It could easily be traced if there was any need. But the creeper kept his trail covered up so well, she seriously doubted if there would ever be any need. What is it? Kenyatta yelled into the receiver, then waited to make sure he had the person he wanted to talk to. Listen, bro, I got something important for you, so when you pull up from that joint, stop at a payphone and give me a ring, okay? Make it as soon as possible, 'cause it's important, my man. Kenyatta stated, then hung up the receiver, not bothering to wait to see if he was understood. The person who didn't understand was the switchboard operator, who had kept his switchboard key open so that he could hear what was said. He was curious about the strange-looking man who stayed in room 12. The man had moved like an animal. At first, the operator had been frightened that the man might stick him up. Then his curiosity had just got the best of him. The man in number 12 looked like a criminal to him. Yet, he hadn't done anything wrong. In fact, he paid his rent ahead of time and didn't bother him making silly phone calls all day long like some people. But the police had asked him to listen in on conversations by people who seemed suspicious. The last time they had raided a room at the motel, they had asked him to listen in on any calls by some of the occupants who rented the high-priced rooms. No black person living honestly could afford those rates anyway, at least not the daily rates. At one time, the motel had been used by affluent dope pushers until the police came through and cleaned it out. Now the police used the switchboard operator to listen in, mainly on the ones who drove the long, expensive Cadillacs. It made him mad to see them pull up in the driveway. He knew that he could never be able to buy one of those luxurious cars and resented the long-haired black men who bought them as if they were small compact cars. Half of the niggas didn't work. He could tell that after they had stayed for a week or two, flashing their huge bankrolls every time they paid their rent. There were 2 Cadillacs sitting in the driveway now, and one of the owners had 2 white girls with him, so the white operator knew that this was probably one of the many black pimps who came in and out. Now all he was waiting for was a chance to catch them with some white tricks in their room, and he would call the Vice Squad immediately and bust their asses. As the man who was going under the name of Marcus Gregory walked out of his room, the operator was trying to decide if it was important enough to call his buddy down on the Vice Squad. The only thing he had to go on was the fact that the caller had asked him to go out and find a payphone. He took a glance out of the window just as the creeper went by. One look at the ugly face on the man made up his mind for him. Any nigga who looked like that had to be up to something wrong. Why else would a woman first ask for him, then let a man take the phone, who then only ordered the ugly bastard to go out and find a payphone? Yes, he reasoned, as he sat before his switchboard. Something out of the ordinary was going on. He would be willing to bet his ass on it. The switchboard operator dialed police headquarters. He knew the number by heart. Kenyatta sat on the bed rubbing the leg of the beautiful woman who was next to him. Betty stretched out on the bed with her arms thrown back over her head. Maybe, just maybe, she wished silently. For some reason, she couldn't get enough of this man. Kenyatta was her very life. The telephone in their room rang shrilly. "Yeah?" Kenyatta roared into the receiver. "Hang that motherfucking receiver up downstairs. I got the phone upstairs here." "Hey, baby boy, you at a payphone now?" He waited for the reply, then continued. "Listen, brother, I got an important job for you, man. Very important. And it's got to be taken care of immediately. Are you strapped down for business?" The creeper patted the gun under his armpit as if the man he was talking to could see his action. "I'm ready and willing, bro," he answered sharply. "Good then," Kenyatta replied quickly. "I want you to put a hit on this white son of a bitch, Angelo. Angelo Benita will be the name he's under. The cat is staying at the Holiday Inn on Woodward in Highland Park. You know where that place is?" Again, Kenyatta waited for the creeper's answer before continuing. "Now dig this, bro," he said, making sure he never used the man's nickname because he sensed the creeper didn't like that name. "Okay, now dig this, boy. The fat honky is staying in room..." He hesitated and dug out a small piece of paper from his pocket. In room 204, that's right, 204. Now he should be loaded with bread, but if you ain't got the time after making the hit, fuck the bread. Don't even worry about it, cause you ain't going there after the money. I want this fat-ass bastard dead before the fucking night is over. And listen, bro, I got this hunch that the motherfucker is about to split. The creeper asked a question and Kenyatta listened patiently before replying, Yeah, you know him, bro. It's the same motherfucker we picked the guns up from. Yeah, well, that bastard has decided not to supply us with guns anymore because of them hits you made on them big shot honkies uptown. Yeah, it kinda got to Angelo, so he's decided to freeze us out. That's right, bro. The honky don't want any more of our business, so I want his ass loaded up. Yeah, he's the one who sold us that motherfucking list. Now he's getting an attitude because we're taking care of business. Kenyatta listened to the creeper's heavy voice coming back over the wires, then cut him off. You got enough bread to hold you, haven't you? He inquired, then added after the man answered. Good, that's enough cash for you if something should happen. You know, enough so that you could get around until I could get some more bread for you. But there's also the chance you might catch Angelo on full. But you had better hurry. Like I said, the peckerwood is getting ready to run. Yeah, I could smell it. Plus, the fact that I think he's going to try and sell us out to them Dagos. Yeah, they'd love to know who's been knocking their buddies off, but we ain't gonna give the snitch time to sell us down the drain. Not if we can reach him in time. Yeah, so baby, you had better get on the case. Each minute we stand here rapping about it gives the motherfucker that much more time to slide out of the trap we're about to spring on his white ass. The telephone went dead in his ear, and Kenyatta knew his instrument of death was on its way. If Angelo hadn't already run, he would not live to run tomorrow because Creeper didn't miss. The man loved his work too much. The thought flashed through Kenyatta's mind about the children that the Creeper had knocked off, and he shrugged. It was something he hadn't foreseen. If he had, he would have given the man direct orders to leave the kids alone. They weren't old enough to hurt them. They couldn't identify him because of their age. So the man had killed them out of pleasure, and only pleasure. No one knew that better than Kenyatta. After seeing the telephone back on the bed, he turned to the woman lying next to him. He took her in his arms and kissed her gently until his desire became stronger and his embrace tighter. He clutched her to him, feeling her passion matching his. He could think only of what he held in his arms. He pushed the red gown off her shoulders, revealing her young, hard nipples. He planted a kiss on each one, nibbling slowly and tenderly. Suddenly the door flew open. Ali stood there grinning down at the half-naked couple. I heard you were up here in the business conference, and I thought that I'd come up and join the conference informally. Well, Kenyatta growled, his anger rising. You see, we're not in conference now. So how about closing the motherfucking door? This ain't no fucking peep show for freaks, he added. Excuse me, boss, if an I's done wrong, Ali drawled with a put-on accent. As Kenyatta rolled over in the bed and sat up, he could see the lust in Ali's eyes. The man still stood in the doorway, allowing his eyes to roam over Betty. He couldn't take his eyes off the woman. I ain't gonna ask you again to close that motherfucking door, Kenyatta stated, the rage in his voice quite apparent. Okay, brother, just keep your shirt on, Ali said as he backed out of the door, his eyes still going over the woman's exposed breasts. Even after the door was closed and the man was gone, the mood between the two people was broken. Kenyatta sat on the edge of the bed, brooding, trying to decide if he should follow Ali downstairs and bring things to a head. There was something building up between the two men. There was something eating at the man, and it wouldn't let go.
Honey,
Betty began.
please don't let it upset you like that. You know what his problem is, Daddy. He just can't accept the fact that you're the big fish in the pond and he's only a small one.
For a second, he was tempted to go on downstairs, but the feel of her hands on his bare back, her fingers moving slowly but surely, changed his mind. He slumped back down on the king-size bed and tried to relax. Yet the man's leering face kept coming between him and what he was enjoying. Betty worked slowly. He could feel the slight tug on his pants. Then they were off. His shorts came next, and then he stretched out and let himself enjoy the sensations his woman was sending his way. He closed his eyes as he felt something hot and moist gripping his penis, and then he could feel her tongue moving up and down the sides. The sensation was almost unbearable at first, but then he stretched back and really began to enjoy the love his woman was making to him. Chapter 12. As evening began to fall outside the motel, Angelo moved swiftly around his room. It had taken a while for him to make up his mind, but now that it was made up, he knew he wanted to get out of the city for a while. He couldn't understand what force was pushing him, but he was used to playing his hunches. Now, a desperate need to get away was upon him. The desire to flee the city had come quite suddenly. Them crazy niggas was one thought that came flashing back in his mind. He didn't have any fear of what they might do to him, because he couldn't see any reason for them to want to hurt him. He had let that bastard Kenyatta up in the air over the guns, not telling him straight out that it was over with, just leading him on. He tried to make him believe it would be a short period before they started doing business again. But he knew in his mind that they'd never do business again, not as long as he lived. Them niggas didn't have the sense God gave them, killing every fucking body in the city. All they were doing was causing a bloodbath, killing like mad dogs. For the 1,000th time, he regretted that he had sold that list to Kenyatta. He hadn't had the slightest notion that the nigga would really follow up his big ideas. He couldn't imagine them spades really reaching the men he had put down on that list, especially those 3 men whose names he had used just because they had been in the newspapers lately and everybody took them to be top mafia men. He had known that none of the 3 had anything to do with dope. Now one of them was dead, and all because he had been pressed for money. If he had known, he could have put a couple of his debtors on that list. That way, he could have really gotten something out of it. As he grabbed the last suits out of the closet, he glanced uneasily toward the doorway. What the hell was wrong with him tonight? He wondered. It wasn't like him to be nervous and jittery for no reason at all. He took another quick glance at his watch. He still had 2 hours to go before his plane left for Florida. So there was no rush. He had his rented car, and now all he had to do was put his few bags in the trunk and get on his way. It didn't take but 20 minutes to get to the airport, so he would still have over an hour and a half to kill. He couldn't see sitting out there all that time waiting for his plane to take off. Yet, he still wanted to rush off. Impatiently, he snapped on the television, then tried to force himself to sit still and watch the 6 o'clock news. The killing of Kingfisher's men was the top story of the hour, and Angelo watched in shocked horror. He knew who had done it at once. The mention of the submachine guns put him right on their case. After that, the newsman gave a quick rundown on what had happened to the family of Mr. Kingfisher's bodyguard. Kingfisher was described as a real estate broker who was being terrorized by someone in the city demanding money or his life. Angelo cursed as he got up and began pacing. The mention of the atrocious way the bodyguard's children had been killed sent shivers up his spine. Which one of them bastards would have been behind that? He wondered. Since he knew so many of them, he tried to figure out which one of the niggas he knew could have done it. Then one face came into his mind. He pictured the one they called the Creeper, as he had seen the man the last time when he had come to pick up some guns. A shiver ran down his back, and he decided he would feel much better being out at the airport with people around him. He could go into the bar and get himself juiced up. Angelo's mind wouldn't allow him to relax, so he started moving the few bags next to the door. As he went back into the bathroom to get his shaving kit, he wondered if he could sell the information to one of the big boys without getting himself involved. If he came out and told them that he supplied the guns to the niggas, they would put two and two together and come up with his name bigger than shit. By now, they must have realized that someone had a list with quite a few of the big shots' name on it. The big boys were walking around in a daze, hoping like hell their names weren't on that list. So it wouldn't do no matter how much he toyed with the idea to let them know that he knew the niggas responsible for the mass murders. He couldn't afford to sell his knowledge. Those people played pretty damn rough. They wouldn't accept his denial that he didn't know anything about that list. No, they wouldn't believe him. Not if he gave them even a hint of what he knew. Next, he considered the possibility of calling the police and leaving a tip. The idea intrigued him. Something had to be done. A mad dog had been turned loose, and no matter how he thought about it, Angelo felt as if he were responsible. Angelo came out of the bathroom with his mind made up. He picked up the telephone and made his call. He asked for the homicide division and spoke hurriedly when the detective answered.
If you want to know who's behind these killings, check out some punks they have an organization on Clay Street. Their leader is called Kenyatta. I know from personal experience that Kenyatta's people are responsible for the killings that happened today. I saw the submachine guns when they put them in their car.
He quickly hung up, then wiped the sweat off his brow. He smiled, feeling as if he had done at least one good turn today. What was it Kenyatta called him? A snitch?
Well, Kenyatta, old boy, I guess you can really call me a snitch now. I just hope they bust your black ass as soon as possible.
Down at headquarters, Detective Nelson called his partner Stewart over and whispered the information in his ear. Both men got up and slipped out of the office. This was the break they needed. Nelson held a small piece of paper in his hand.
The caller even gave me this address. It won't take us long to check it out. He says they keep their guns hid there, too.
Stewart glanced over at him.
You think we might meet with more than we can handle? Maybe we should take some kind of help along? Fuck that shit!
Nelson exploded.
I don't plan on allowing none of those bastards to steal this shit from under our noses. Hell no! We can check it out ourselves, and if we need any help, call in the black and white squad car as a backup. In fact, when we get there, we can call in a couple of squad cars to help us out.
The two detectives grinned at each other and rushed down in the elevator. This was a chance to put a feather in each of their caps, one they could be proud of. The captain would have to look at them with a little more respect after this, instead of putting all his faith in that black and white team he seemed to favor. As the two detectives left the elevator downstairs in the basement garage, they met Detectives Malloy and Andrews of Vice. Nelson and Stewart stopped and waited for the other young detective to reach them. Stewart leaned back on his heels and opened his suit coat, revealing the double harness shoulder holster he wore. The two big .45s made his suit coat lopsided. "When the hell did you start working with Wild Bill Hickok, Nelson?" Detective Malloy asked as they came up. Nelson just smiled, then said,
Jack, you know how Stewart is. He thinks two of everything is better than one. But I'll be damned if I want to lug all that heavy artillery around. This fucking 38 I have to carry gets in the way too damn much as it is.
Stewart only chuckled. He didn't give a damn what they thought about him wearing two pistols. He liked the idea of himself in his checkered red and white sports coat with the two guns underneath. Malloy ignored the young detective after that and spoke to Nelson. I think I might have something for you. It's only a small lead, but it might just click. We got a call from this informant of ours at a motel over on Grand River. Now, I don't know if it will help you or not, or even if it's your man, because we got this call and just ran by there and checked the guy's room out. There was nothing there, but one thing kept ringing in my mind. I heard about this description you got from the paper boy on that family killing out in Conan Gardens. Malloy hesitated, then added, It might be nothing, but it rang this bell with me, you know, with the kid calling the guy he saw leaving the house a creeper. Well, we got the very same description from the motel owner, you know. The only way he could describe this guy is by calling him a creeper. So like I said, it might not be anything, but it is funny that both people resorted to that same description. I mean, it's different. You don't run into it every day, so he must be a hard-looking fucker, whoever he is. Jack gestured with his hands. But like I said, it might be nothing. Then again, it might give you guys a lead. From what I hear, you could sure as hell stand a lead right about now. Malloy's partner, Andrew, spoke up. I wanted to find Ryan and let him know about this. He digs like a bulldog, so something like this will be right up his line.
God damn it, Andrews. You don't have to tell Ryan shit, Stewart said, letting his coat fall back in place as he stopped posing. Me and Nelson can check it out as good as Ryan and that spade he works with.
Andrews glanced sharply at Stewart. I don't know how you meant that, Stewart, but I'll tell you one thing. Benson, that so-called Spade, is one of the best detectives you'll ever meet, and you can lay odds to that. At that moment, Stewart snorted through his nose as if he'd gotten himself a smell of something bad.
Each man to his own opinion, Tom, but I have my doubts about Mr. Benson. He don't raise no hell in my view. I don't see him busting this case we're all working like hell to open. Nah, he's just living off of past cases. You guys will see me one day. If it weren't for the old boy Ryan, that Spade will probably still be in uniform someplace.
Well, whatever you do, Malloy stated harshly, don't let Ryan hear you cutting his partner up like that, because you'd have one mad-ass officer on your tail. I wouldn't blame him either, Andrews added. Benson had saved Ryan's life on more than one occasion, Stewart, and Ryan don't forget things like that, especially when a guy steps in front of you and takes a fucking slug from a 38 in his own chest so that you don't get hit.
That's new shit to me, Nelson said, trying to pull his partner out of the hot water he was getting into. Yeah, it probably is, but the old-timers around here know about it, Malloy stated coldly. It was before you guys' time. Both of you were still in school when it happened, and Ryan is one guy who will never forget it. He looks on his colored partner as a friend, so keep that in mind whenever you're talking about Benson around him. He won't stand for no shit said about his partner, and when I say he won't stand for it, I mean just that. It don't take much to set him off either. Malloy turned to his partner. Well, Tom, we gave these guys enough to make them heroes if they follow it up right, so let's get on upstairs and finish our checker game. Stewart laughed. That's the sweet thing about Vice Detail. All you guys have to do is bust some sweet-ass broads and relax the rest of the time. Yup, you hit it right on the head, Malloy answered sharply. That's all we have to do. But if I were you, and again he turned to Nelson, I'd approach this guy with a lot more care. We just left the motel, and it looks as if he will be coming back there. But we didn't have any jurisdiction, so we left.
So we decided to pass the information on to you guys, who get paid for working on this kind of crap.
Okay, we really appreciate it,
Nelson said as the two men started to walk away.
And we'll check it out. You never can tell. It might just be the key we've been looking for. I'll just bet it is,
the two vice men heard Stewart say dryly as the men went off in pairs. You know, Malloy said loud enough for Stewart and Nelson to hear, that fucking Stewart is a smart-ass bastard. I'd sure in the hell hate to be in Nelson's position and have to work with that smart-ass every day. Jesus Christ, I couldn't wish that on my worst friend, if you know what I mean. Nelson had to reach out and grab Stewart's arm to hold him back.
Don't worry about cracks like that, man. We got more important things on our minds than what some fucking frustrated Vice Squad dick says. Let's get over there and see if we can shed some kind of light on this case, Stu. With both of these leads we got, maybe, just maybe, one of them might pay off. Okay, Stewart answered. I'll say amen to that. But when we get back, I'm going to ask that smart ass just what he meant by that crack, and you can bet on that.
Chapter 13. The creeper peered out of his motel room window. The room he had rented at the Holiday Inn was right across the street from the one that was still occupied by Angelo. From what he could see through the partially open drapes of Angelo's window, he could tell that the man was getting ready to make his run. Kenyatta hadn't been wrong about that, he reflected as he watched. The bastard is on his way out as quick as he can go, but ain't he got a surprise coming? He ain't going where he's expecting to go, the creeper coldly thought as he watched and waited, trying to make up his mind how to do it. He didn't like to make his hits out in the open, but at the rate Angelo was moving, it looked as if he would have to knock the sucker off out in the parking lot. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eyes, he noticed some movement. It was the maid going into the apartment 4 doors down from the one Angelo occupied. It came to him at once. The idea was beautiful. He found himself moving before he had even finished thinking it through. It would work. He was sure of it. He ran down the stairway and up the steps into the other wing. He slowed down as he approached the open door where the maid was busy making up the bed. The heavy-set black woman had her back turned to him as he slipped into the room. She must have sensed his presence because she was turning around when he chopped down on the back of her neck with a judo punch. It was a neck-breaking blow, one that the creeper knew how to deliver with ease. He was always surprised whenever he used it and killed with just the one blow. It made his pride swell to know that he could take a life with just one simple action. The dead black woman meant nothing to him. He had no emotional feelings about killing her other than a feeling of pride. Pride that he could destroy with just one well-placed blow to the back of the neck. He owed this prowess to what Kenyatta had taught him. He reached down and took the key ring from the woman's body, examining his work and nodding silently. Bitch never knew what hit her. He chuckled, remembering the long hours he had spent listening to Kenyatta, then doing the things that his leader had instructed him to do. Yeah, thought the creeper. That's one black man who really knows his shit. The creeper moved quietly to the door, took a quick glance outside to make sure the way was clear, and then slipped out, closing the door firmly behind him. It would be a while before anybody found the woman's body. Then it would be too late. He would be long gone. The job that was waiting for him was the one he was concerned with, and he only hoped it would go as smoothly as the murder of the maid. If he could kill the fat man with one blow, there would be no noise to give him away. It would be the perfect murder. He checked the numbers on the key ring until he found the one he wanted. He hesitated outside the door of Angelo's room, listening. He wanted to make sure that man was by himself. He'd hate to bust in and find some cunt laying up on the bed. Quietly, he inserted the key into the lock and removed the pistol from his shoulder holster. He put his shoulder against the door and pushed. He was in the room before the fat man had any idea he was going to have company. Angelo glanced up sharply as he heard his door open. His jaw dropped in surprise as he saw the tall, bald-headed man step into the room. The big gun in the black man's hand told him it wasn't a friendly visit. Just the sight of the creeper caused Angelo to feel as if he was about to have a bowel movement.
"What the fuck is going on here?"
he managed to say, trying to get up from the edge of the bed. His legs didn't have any strength in them, so he just sat back down.
Hello, white boy. You didn't think we were going to let you leave town with all our money, did you?
The creeper inquired as his small reddish eyes searched the room, making sure no one else was there.
Nah, man. We couldn't allow no shit like that. So Kenyatta sent me around to collect it. He says you sold him some bullshit information, some shit he can't even use. It seems as if every fucking body on the list you gave him is dying for some reason or other.
The man let out a cold laugh. The creeper leaned over towards Angelo as if he was going to confide in him.
Yeah, Angelo, old boy, as much trouble as we've gone through, it would seem that you would know better than to put shit on my main man like that. So here I am, the collector. I've come to pick up the money you came and collected for a list that wasn't worth shit.
For a brief second, Angelo felt relief. If it wasn't nothing but a heist, it wouldn't be bad. He could always get some more money, even though he hated the idea of parting with what he had. It was what he had planned to use on his trip, but from the looks of the black man in front of him, this was no time to argue over a few thousand. So that's how you guys operate. After all the fucking guns I've sold you, you turn around and rip me off. You know, you can tell Kenyatta for me that this ends our gun connection. He'll never get another motherfucking thing out of me. Angelo was just talking now, trying to make himself believe that nothing more than a heist was going on. His mind wouldn't accept any other idea. It couldn't all come to an end like this. Not in a fucking motel room at the hands of a goddamn nigger. Nope, he could not bring himself to face it. Angelo got up and walked over to his suitcase. Now, don't make no sudden moves while you're playing around there, Creeper warned him sharply as he came around the bed behind him. Shivers went up and down Angelo's spine at the nearness of the man.
"I'm just getting the fucking money for you. Ain't that what you fucking came for?"
Angelo snapped, trying to muster up the courage he didn't have. He could hardly stand because his knees were shaking so badly. He pulled out a package of money wrapped with the amount written across the paper. As he did this, he tried to cover up another package of money that was of the same amount.
"Here, take it. It's $5 grand there. Just what Kenyatta paid for the list. Tell him for me that I've got a hell of a shipment of guns coming, and I know he'll want them, but before he can get them, you'll have to kick back this bread that you're ripping me off for. I mean every fucking word of it, too,"
Angelo said, fooling no one but himself, unable to face the fact that he would never leave that room alive. The small pistol that he had hidden at the bottom of his suitcase stayed right there. He just didn't have the nerve to try for it. At least not while he believed he might be able to talk his way out of the situation. The creeper studied him icily.
You know, the way you pulled that package out, I have a feeling it's not the only money you have there. I mean, I wouldn't be able to sleep nights if I thought I left with only half the money while you still had more.
Angelo turned on him angrily.
"Just what the hell is this? A ripoff? You said you came after the $5 grand that Kenyatta paid for the list."
Angelo found courage in his desperation. The prospect of losing all of his money affected the fat man deeply.
What do you really think it is, white boy?
Creeper said as he pulled the razor out of his pocket and advanced toward the frightened man. It was out in the open now. This man had come to kill him. Angelo stalled for time.
Wait, here, I'll give you all the money, just don't cut me.
Angelo wasn't truly a coward. He had come up in the old school with some of the meanest dagos the city had ever produced. But this one black man had made him lose his balls for a minute. Now, faced with certain death, his courage returned. It was the courage of a cornered rat.
I got $10,000 more here,
Angelo said abruptly, hoping he could fool the man who had come to kill him.
10 grand more?
The creeper shouted. That was more money than he had ever seen in his life. Even though he didn't care that much about money, he knew that if he returned with $15,000, Kenyatta would be pleased as hell. As these thoughts flew through his mind, Creeper made one of the first big mistakes he had made since becoming a professional hitman. He took his eyes off the fat man. Angelo took out the other package of money, tossed it on the bed, then went back to looking in the suitcase as if he was searching for another one. The bundle of money hit the bed and fell to the floor. The creeper's eyes followed the package, noticing that it was wrapped like the one he had already stuck in his pocket. There was writing on the wrapping, and he reached down and picked it up. He could see that the amount was $5,000. While mentally counting the money, the creeper believed that the frightened fat man was searching for a third package. With that one, he would have the 15 grand the man said he had, and then he could get on with cutting the honky's throat. He was just straightening up from picking up the package when the fat man made his move. Angelo spun around, swinging the suitcase, and as the suitcase struck the creeper in the chest, the fat man raised the small derringer he had palmed and fired. The suitcase seemed to have done more damage to the creeper than the little gun. The 2 quick shots that struck him in the stomach didn't faze him at all. He raised the .38 in his left hand, dropping the straight razor to the floor. The sound of the police special going off in the small room was deafening. The first shot caught Angelo high in the chest, slamming him back against the wall. The second shot struck 2 inches away from the first one. As Angelo struggled to raise the small pistol, he remembered that it was only a 2-shot derringer. The gun clicked on empty chambers. As the creeper turned away from the dying man, he could feel the pain starting to spread in his stomach. He clutched at his guts and staggered around the big bed. He noticed the towel lying on the top of the end table and snatched it up. He stuck it inside his shirt, trying to stop the flow of blood, cursing loudly.
The son of a bitch and honky faked me out,
he murmured as he started to make his way from the room. His mind was racing. He knew he would have to get away, and quick. The sound of his .38 going off had been loud enough to awaken the dead. He staggered to the door and somehow managed to snatch it open. As he stumbled from the room, still clutching the .38 tightly in his fist, he struggled to reach the iron railing and caught his balance. Out of the corner of his eye, he could make out 2 men rushing up the stairway. His brain warned him that it was the police. He realized at once that he couldn't outrun them. He raised the gun up as the first officer came up the steps. For some reason, he couldn't seem to draw his bead on the man, who stopped and yelled,
"Drop it! Police!"
That was the only warning he got. The second man, who appeared to be a black man, raised his weapon and fired. The shot picked him up and threw him backwards. He could feel himself falling, and then the concrete struck him in the back. "God damn it, Ben! I wanted to take him alive!" The creeper heard the words coming as if they were from a great distance. Even then, he attempted to raise the gun in his hand, but someone kicked the weapon away. "Yeah, I know. You wanted him alive bad enough to get shot up for it," Benson said sharply, bending over the creeper's body. "Looks as if somebody else shot him before I hit him," Benson said after making a quick examination. Ryan took a quick look inside the motel room. There's another one inside. I better check and find if he's cashed in his chips yet. He went inside and leaned down over Angelo. When Angelo tried to speak, blood came gushing out of his mouth.
I'm on my last ride,
he managed to say. Who's responsible for this? Ryan asked Angelo sharply, almost pulling the wounded man up to his feet. He bent down and listened as the man tried to speak.
It's that fucking Kenyatta. He's gone mad. I shouldn't have ever sold him that list.
Again, blood came out of the man's mouth.
All my fault. I sold him the fucking list.
Where can we find Kenyatta? Where, Angelo? Where the hell does he hide out? At first, Ryan thought the question would go unanswered. But somehow, the man managed to raise up on his elbow and speak.
Farm! He's got a farm!
But as he tried to give that information, he coughed up the last life in his body. Dark blood ran down his chin. Ryan didn't need a doctor to tell him that the man was dead. We have reached the end of this portion of the miniseries on Ralph Reads. I would like, or rather love, to thank you, queens and kings, fellow royalty, for stopping by. You may connect with me via Facebook. Send a friend request to Ralph Anthony Garcia. On Twitter and Instagram at RGMC2407. Send an email to rgmc2407@gmail.com, where if you would like to leave a donation, please use the Zelle app or paypal.me/RGMC2407 or Cash App. My cash tag is RGMC2407. You may also connect with me on my other channel, RGMC, Ralph Garcia, Master of Ceremonies, and right here on TURN, the United Ronin Networks. We are Ronin. Fellow royalty, pick up a good book, read a good story, and set your good self free. I appreciate you, and I love you like cooked food. I will see you folks on the next edition of Ralph Reads. Be safe out there.